Hi, my name is Jamaika, and this is my reflective document for the site-specific module as part of my second year dance course. So first I'm going to talk about basically sort of initial ideas and where they came from using tasks. Specifically one which was task 1, exploring the space in Yorkshire dance. And basically we decided to use the window to sort of guide the spectator's eye to sort of look out the window and like sort of use perception. And then it came with an idea which was very key in like how can we do that and sort of play with who is a spectator and play with audience perception if there is a glass room between us. So that's where we sort of went to using a shop. With that we played a lot around how can we catch the audience's eye and keep them interested, playing with things like texture and depth, and like working with audience perception when we're up close against each other. Is there eye contact? Is it like we're in two separate worlds and it's like we're not there? Like how does this glass play with who is a spectator? And the purpose also behind the shop, if we can change that. If it is, they know it's a shop, but can we change the whole viewing of it by what we're doing inside it and how we're using it? So when being in and around the space, it was hard because at first we didn't have the space because we was looking for a space. Essentially, we were just looking for a small shop window, but then we got a space which was massive in depth and length, and we sort of saw that more as a positive to use that and to play with the audience perception. So before that, we worked on just creating material around the idea that we had. Now, this wasn't the best for me personally way to work out of the space when working on site-specific tasks, because it's easy to sort of create movement, and the movement is more authentic when you're in the space, how I felt, because at points we got to where we was in the studio and was like, we've created the movement, we just need to be in the space. And when we got into the space and we just spent hours just exploring, like even playing with, because it was in a shopping centre that was active for the hours that we were slotted in there, how can we play with catching people's attention, playing with the spectator's eye, using the depth, what's going to make them look if we're further back there in the space to when we're up close against the glass. And it was very nice just being in the space, and I found that a better way of working on this site-specific module, to create more movement based around the idea, but also create more ideas based around being in the space. So talking about the ways of working, someone who I've looked into who has also heavily uses the participation of audience and site response in their work and their making of the work is Vanessa Grass, and she uses, with her performance called Mesh, where she heavily used the influence and participation of the audience, but the movement, it was in response to the site, and this was something that we could use and question using within the piece. So from another task that we had, we basically had to go and find our own site and create a movement and a short piece from that, and just literally bring back material. With that, we found an amphitheatre in Temple Newsome, and we sort of played with like the functionality of it, and this is where it links to the idea of playing around with the functionality of the shop. Using the amphitheatre, it was like kind of like how in this weather condition when it was snowy, how it is abandoned and how we can play with that, how we can sort of play with the symmetry of like the linings and sort of the position of where the audience would usually sit, where the performance is. How can we change that and sort of again look at the different functionalities of the space and how you can change it from being what its function was to then how the space can be completely different in terms of what you're doing in the space. And that sort of links to using the shop and the window, and how like if we just use the front of the space, what message would that play to the audience? Also, if we let the audience come into the space like a functional shop, if it was open, how would that look? Like a gallery then, or would it still look like a functional shop? Or because there's mannequins and sort of this sort of thing. So the idea of keeping them out of it and having two locked zones, then again change the functionality of the shop, and how can we catch the spectator's eye in a shop that essentially you cannot go into and you cannot do the normal function of what the space was created for. Also, the space being abandoned and empty then added more space for changing the functions and their normal idea of what a shop space is used for. When creating this work, we really took into account the audience and the audience perception and on the performance, and sort of seeing movements and how it will be being at the front of the shop against the glass or deep into the back of it. Reading a choreographer's handbook by Jonathan Burrows, he said that the audience are usually in front of you. Facing them is one possibility, however it isn't the only option and it isn't for guaranteed communication. And that's when it was really like we need to play about with the movement at the front will be key because they can see it but not necessarily communicate what we want to communicate to the audience. So how can we do that using the whole depth? And that's really how we play with textures and movement, working with the props and the mannequins in the space, and that really then allowed a space to create more movement through just looking at how we can communicate, because the front essentially isn't the only option. So using the width of the space, the length of it, the depth, the floor, heights, props, and that's when it all sort of tied together into the piece that we created. So from that, I want to focus on the nude illusion and why we decided to use the nude illusion. We wanted to do that so it was all equal bodies in the space, and we wanted to create it so see how the mannequins being put in place can affect where you look on the body and certain things like that. So that's why we decided to look at using the nude illusion. Moving on from that, I'd like to take a quote from Naked, A Cultural History of American Nudism. A quote that says, "The social and cultural assumptions define the naked body as shameful and immoral. We kind of wanted to move away from that, because it also goes on to say nudism to define itself as therapeutic rather than erotic." And it's kind of, we looked at how it could come across like linking it to the red light district, how that is used for an erotic sort of way, putting a female body or even a male body in a window is used in more of an erotic and sexual way. Now, we wanted to not go through that route and move away from that and see the body as just like essentially a therapeutic thing that you see a nude illusion or like a naked body and how it moves in that space. So we wanted to move away essentially from making it more erotic rather than just it being a body in the space. So to finish off, I'd just like to say I really enjoyed working on the site-specific module. It was really nice to get out and really concentrate on working in a site space. And if I was ever to redo this module again, the thing that I'd probably look into more is playing more with audience interaction and having them in the space as well as them being a spectator, and seeing how that can change up the performance when the audience are in the space.